Hey everybody, it's GVN Live. Today we're talking about Iconoclasts in our video game book club, and we also go over our
Hey
thoughts
everybody,
and
it's
prayers for
GVN Live.
E3 from
Today we're
this
talking.
year.
I know my future is, but it'll never be our best. Even distance in your world will never ever change the past. Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Fight Club Hubs here, and welcome to another wonderful episode of GVN Live. We want to thank Jan for that amazing intro right there. I suck at it, and she comes in on her first try and knocks it out of the ballpark.
Oh, shock.
Yeah, so we are joined once again by our friend Dr. Dog, Mr. Brian Dawson. Welcome back, good sir. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me back.
And you were at E3 this past weekend, correct?
I was indeed.
All right, and that will be our main topic of discussion after Video Game Book Club. So, and I'm really excited to talk about E3. We did some live reacts to a couple of conferences, and I guess we'll touch on that too a little bit. So, but the first things we're going to start off with is the Video Game Book Club, and Jan here picked the game for us to play. So, Jan, how would you like to start us off?
So, the game that I had picked was Iconoclasts. It's been a while since I've really gotten into like Metroidvania style games because I'm not a big Metroid, I'm not a big Metroid fan because it just felt real clunky to me. And Castlevania has always sort of been like, it just sort of like slowly evolved to a point where I was just kind of like, it's the same game. Other than maybe Symphony of the Night, because let's be honest, Symphony of the Night's kind of like the best ever. But it's it's been a while since one of those that a game in the genre itself has actually held my interest beyond maybe like the first 20 minutes. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the story of the game is actually really interesting. Basically, your father was what they call a mechanic who fixes the problems of the houses so that this fuel called ivory can be used to make it so that the houses work and that people can function in everyday society. One day you start the game off as this character who is actually the daughter of this mechanic who is alone by herself. Her father passed away, and she is picking up in his stead, but she's not doing it for the overall company because there's this whole sort of religious undertones of him and her and the way things kind of run in this world. And so when I really started getting into the nitty gritty of it, there was this whole side with this other group that's going against that as an opposing faction, and it just really kind of enthralled me. And so this was something that I was like, this is a game that I think we should really play together as like a book club, and then really get a chance to play it and see sort of what everyone else kind of thinks about it as well. Because like I said, it's been a long time since a story in a Metroidvania style game has really captivated me.
Okay. So I actually had a chance to play for a few hours. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play it until nearly the weekend because, life gets in the way. But I did get a good chance to dive into it, and my initial impressions were, yeah, this is a very good Metroidvania-style game. I really like the graphics. Nice, bright, colorful. I do catch the vibe of, society being run by, of course, by the religious organization with the unknown leader of Mother, and of course, I guess the hierarchy is him or father or whatever he's called, and you got all these agents, which kind of give me this.
Really felt like Shinra.
Shinra, yeah. It
really felt like Shinra.
It felt like Shinra. You have these bunch of people in that organization too that seem to have different unique personalities. The first villain that I encountered that I was just getting an odd vibe from was General Leo, and he's sitting here arguing with a pirate by he's having a philosophical argument with some
argument.
he's having a philosophical argument, and then at the end he wins his argument by kicking the dude off a cliff. And I just find that really interesting. The one big thing about the way the game's world is set up, it reminds me strongly of a book by the name of The Giver, if you remember that. It's a book that was written, I forget how many years ago, but I did read it in school. Pretty much society was based on a job system, similar to what they have here. You are assigned a job once you hit the age of maturity, and that is the one and only job you are allowed to have. If you go outside of your job, you are banished outside the city, and you die in the harsh cold. Now, of course, mine is the kid getting, the memories of the past stuck in his head via telepathy of some kind. I mean, that's not in here, unless, of course, it is, and I have to play farther into the game. I like the game's style. I like the controls. I do have to say a lot of stuff is very telegraphed when it comes to the combat, especially the bosses. So I don't exactly feel any kind of challenge yet, but maybe I will along the way. For a Metroidvania game, hello, Grostart. For a Metroidvania style game, though, it seems pretty linear for the most part. You got to go to, you have a section of a map, but they're almost set up like their own individual stages. You got to go to this portion of the map in order to get an item, so you can go to this portion of the map, and then you got to be able to go here, have this little boss battle, and then you can advance on to the next stage. And it doesn't feel like a pure Metroidvania experience, but I do like where they're going, and I do think that at some point later in the game you will have the option of, I guess, going back to these areas. Is that the case? Okay, cool. But
yeah, for sure. So, like, if you notice, like, in the first area, there's a couple of sections where, even with, like, a fully charged stun shot, it still just bounces off those rocks. But then later on, you get a weapon that lets you blow up those types of rocks, but there's still some that are in the first area that you didn't get a chance to do anything with. So, yeah, there is backtrack exploration that is pretty standard to the Metroidvania style of gameplay later on in the game once you get past a certain point in the story.
Yeah, and another thing I do like, I like the puzzle elements involving the wrench, and how you have to be able to monitor and make lifts, move around, and you have to time it so you get to a certain portion to make another set of lifts move, to open up a path in order to get to your goal and all that. It's pretty fun. I like it so far. Mark, your thoughts?
Maybe it was just me, but I kind of look at the situation as we are in an age where we are almost under something of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to Metroidvania-style games at this point.
Too many?
Not even too many. It's just that you have so many different choices that, like, there's just more there than you know what to do with in a lot of cases. So, for me, it's 10 years ago, I would have welcomed any Metroidvania-style game that came along, but at this point, I'm kind of in the position where I sort of look at it from the perspective of what does this game do that makes it better than the stuff that I've played in the past year. And, like, I gave Iconoclasts, like, maybe, like, half an hour, and it just did nothing for me. I mean, I want to be clear, it's a very pretty game, and it mechanically has some interesting ideas, like the stuff with the wrench, where you use the wrench as a tool to open up doors, move around things, swing off of stuff, etc. is neat. But, like, I don't know, it didn't really strike me as anything particularly latching on. Like, it didn't lock me in. It didn't do anything that made me go, oh my god, I want to keep playing this to see where this goes. I was just like, oh, all right, this is the thing. It's fine. To a certain extent, I would say it's probably good in some respects, but it did nothing for me. Because I've played Hollow Knight relatively recently. I played Dead Cells relatively recently. I've played Salt and Sanctuary relatively recently, etc. And it's when you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 different games of this type that you've done stuff with, it gets harder and harder to latch on to a new one that comes along, especially if they're all within like a 1-2 year period. It's fine, but that's all I can really say about it. It's a game that I will probably come back to at some point, but it did nothing to really hold my attention or like make me want to come back to it.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Well, I would have to agree with you in some aspects because, yeah, we have had a bunch of, these Metroidvania games come out in just the last few years, and so many of them are trying their best to differentiate themselves from one another. I mean, there's Shovel Knight, there's Salt and Sanctuary, and all these other games that are just, just at the forefront, and then you got these other games that are coming out like, what's that? Bloodline, Bloodstained.
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, yeah.
Bloodstained.
Bloodstained
Yeah.
Ritual of the Night, and then you have the other version of the game coming out as well, probably next year. And you just have so many options that it's just really hard for you to look at some of these games and be like, okay, I'll pick that one, and then you're not really going to be, I guess, too wowed if you're spoiled by playing too many of these. I mean, reason why I'm very intrigued and I seem to enjoy Iconoclasts is really I have not really been playing a whole lot of these Metroidvania style games lately. I would have to say that really the last one I played was Shovel Knight. I haven't really been delving into this genre in quite a while, to be truthfully honest. But I personally enjoy it. I'm probably gonna give it a go for as long as I can until Lost Child steals me away, which I just got in today. So, what about you? How what else do you want to share about the game, Jan? Is there anything else?
Without giving a lot of it away, because I'm probably about 6 hours in already. There's a point where you get to the second area after the first boss, which is pretty telegraphed, and I won't deny that. And a lot of it, I think, is just to get familiar with the way boss mechanics actually function in the game. But when you get to the second boss, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more loosey-goosey with the way it actually plays it out, because you're doing it solo instead of simplistic. It's not like Mega Man level, Mega Man entry stage boss, and it's not. This is how boss mechanics really work, boss. And it's like, oh, okay, so now you're supposed to understand the difference between using the normal shot and the secondary shot that you've got, and getting the ability to either use a normal shot or a charged shot based on the type of attack the boss is using. It doesn't really tell you that that's what you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to figure that part out. Basically, the first major weapon upgrade that you get is basically a rolling bomb, which is fairly simplistic. You shoot it out; it has a little bomb, little like thermal grenade that pops out, and after a few seconds, it explodes. Well, the second boss has this little exhaust port, and the object is to try to arc your rolling shot into the exhaust port to blow it up, and then swap over to either your wrench or to your stun gun to do normal damage to the top of its head. And then you have to sort of go through all this functional changing of how the boss interacts with the new weapons that you've got. And so later on, there's other weapons that you get that you need to have. It's got the Mega Man formula where certain weapons will do more damage to that next level's boss. But in order for you to get to that, you have to go through that Metroid style of map recovery to find out where you need to go, to find the weapon, to beat the boss. Otherwise, the boss is going to be extremely difficult because you're not going to have the right weapon to actually kill it. So it's an interesting sort of flashier Mega Man, if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty. And I really do enjoy that kind of gameplay. It's just, like you said, with other games like Dead Cells and Hollow Knight and some of the other games that are out in that sort of genre, it's difficult to really see that this is a game that is definitely under a lot of people's radars because they're looking at it from a gameplay aspect versus an actual like artistic standpoint of the actual game's overall just the overall, not just the message, but like the overall sort of just view of the game itself. And so something like that to me is like, that's really what I've sort of been like moving myself towards recently, is like, I don't really play the game to play the game anymore. I'm starting to play the game now to sort of look at it a bit more objectively and be like, okay, does it look good? Great. Does it play good even though it looks great? Yeah, that's fine. Does it look like trash? Maybe. Does it play well? Absolutely. You can still have smooth controls and have pixel graphics that look like they're from the Atari 2600. You know, so it's like I come from it from a standpoint of like Iconoclast. Like out of the 3 games like that we mentioned, like I had a choice between either getting Hollow Knight or getting Iconoclasts, and I actually chose Iconoclasts over Hollow Knight this time. Even though I do still want to get and play Hollow Knight because it looks absolutely fantastic. Iconoclasts really got me with a lot more because of the story and how it was written, and that to me was something that I was actually a lot more interested in, and that was really what kind of drove me to get Iconoclasts instead.
All right. Would you definitely recommend this game to anybody who's looking for a new style of game to pick up?
Absolutely. The story alone is what's really keeping me playing it beyond just like the initial first couple of hours. There's also like the weapon, not really the weapon, but like the statistics swap system that they've got in the game, where you've got 3 slots where you can have different style of abilities, like one that makes it so that you don't take any damage for 1 hit that you have to regenerate, and then there's one that makes it so that your wrench does more damage, and there's another one that makes it so that if you go into an area that's like poisonous, you don't breathe in, so you don't take slow damage as you're going through the poisoning area. So it really adds a little bit more to the gameplay that allows you to sort of stylize how you want your character to be as you're going through the level, to get to that next checkpoint, or to get to that next weapon unlock, or to get to the next boss fight. So while it may seem like it's a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more linear than more other games that are in the genre, it still has enough depth for people who are still trying to just play like casually, versus say somebody who's like, I want to play 2D Dark Souls, you know? Because I mean, let's be honest, that's basically what Hollow Knight is. It really gives you the ability to say, this is a little bit more relaxed, this is a little bit more story driven, and you'll probably have just as much fun.
All right, sounds good. I mean, I will definitely second that. I definitely think people should give this little game a go. It's, basically everything you said right there. I actually really enjoy this story. Again, mainly reason for that is because I find so many similarities with The Giver, which is a pretty good book. And I just found out that there's actually 2 sequels to that book, too, so I'm going to jump into that when I get a chance. Completely off topic there. But so let's move on to the main topic at hand. So this past week was E3 2018, and it was okay. Some people...
I think this is probably the first time that I've ever actually agreed with somebody who said that. It's like, E3, it's Video Game Christmas, except I already knew what I was getting.
So
I agree with Hamish when he said it on his video that it was basically that we got spoiled and we knew what was coming. And so at that point, it was more about how they were showing it, not what they were showing. And so that was really about what this E3 was all about. And so it's like, I'm kind of worried because I know what's coming. I want to see how they present it. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, that was rough.
All right. So as a person who was there at E3, Brian, please give us your experience of what it's like attending this amazing expo.
Well, I'm probably not the best person to ask about that because I think this was like the 15th E3 for me, somewhere in there, like 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. So at this point, I'm kind of like, oh, this again. It's also changed quite a bit. Like my first E3 was the last year it was in Atlanta back in '98. And even like my first like probably 3 or 4 E3s, it was like you had to bring an extra suitcase just to take home all the swag and random stuff that you got. And now it's like it's starting to rebound a little bit, but now it's like, oh, I can fit everything that I get in the suitcase that I bring. But also the internet has changed a lot of what you can do at E3, because it used to be, the best part of E3 for me was the press conferences. And so I would go and I would attend all the press conferences, and after that I'd be like, well, I can go home now. I don't need to go to appointments. But now it's like I can just watch the press conferences from home, and I want to go to actually play some of the games. So a lot of it has changed, but I kind of feel like I have to disagree that everything was spoiled. I think a lot of publishers held back. We didn't see the Avengers game from Square Enix, which we know is coming. We didn't see anything of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which would have been huge if we'd seen that. We didn't see a lot of new stuff from Ubisoft. Like Splinter Cell has been rumored for how long, and it wasn't there at all. So I think there was a lot of stuff that they could have shown, and some disappointment in there. Like I actually feel like a lot of people were hoping that Shadows Die Twice was Bloodborne 2, and it wasn't. And while people are certainly happy with Shadows Die Twice, there's still that group of people that are like, well, where's my Bloodborne 2?
Where's Bloodborne 2?
Yeah, so I definitely think that the companies could have brought more. Like you could look at Epic Games, and it was all Fortnite, and that's great. Fortnite has 120 million active players. You can't complain with that. But where's something new? Where's some new season 5 stuff? Where's some confirmation of the competitive season other than it's coming and it will cover a year and everybody's invited? Like I feel like a lot of these companies could have given us more than they did. Where was Rockstar? RDR2 was behind closed doors to a very, very limited audience. So I definitely feel like there was a lot of holding back. Even Microsoft basically waving the white flag and saying we're looking at next gen, and here have Forza Horizon this year, and that's it.
I did find that weird that Microsoft was so quick to mention, oh, hey, we are developing next-gen technology in the middle of their press conference, on top of, showing off 40 games, 18 console exclusives, which is probably the most they've shown for console exclusives for them in, like, the last several years.
Yeah, but when you're taking a massive shit kicking, your first mentality is go to the next generation where we have a chance of making a comeback. That's what Nintendo did. Twice.
Yep.
So it's very much a case where Microsoft has looked at this and has basically decided we can't rehab. We can't come back from this. Let's just go to the next generation. And that, more so than in any other year, seems deeply, deeply stupid. But like that's the direction that everybody seems to go to in these sorts of situations. So,
well, Sony didn't do that for the past generation. In fact, they were getting their ass kicked out of the 10-year run of the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Sony managed to make it a comeback and make a big turnaround with the system, and nearly pull it off by pulling neck and neck with Microsoft.
Sony, let's be clear, Sony was only losing in the U.S., but the U.S. is such a huge market for them that they were basically losing, and to this day have still lost. Like in every other territory they won, but in the U.S. they lost so bad that they, to the best of my knowledge, they still to this day have not come back.
And honestly, that's a really good point, because even if you look at everything Microsoft is doing for next gen, which I honestly don't have a problem with them moving to next gen, because they're showing us, hey, we're serious about coming out of the gate as strong as possible. We've lost this gen, that's fine. Here's what we're going to do. Well, here's a hint of what's coming next gen. But what I think is interesting is, they acquired 4 studios and announced a brand new one, and not a single one of those studios was Japanese.
Yeah.
And while that's very difficult to do for an American company to go in and buy a Japanese company, if they had wanted to, they could have. So the fact that they didn't, I think, says
really
a lot.
It speaks volumes to the fact that it feels like they don't care about the Japanese market. They care more about the US and the EU markets because...
Well, let's be clear. The Japanese market actively is aggressively against Microsoft. Microsoft has tried to cater to the Japanese market for 3 console cycles now, and Japan has straight up said, go fuck yourself, we don't care.
Well, Japan
honestly,
was like that. Japan was like that for...
What did Microsoft do for the Xbox One? Because for the Xbox 360, they made a push. They had Lost Odyssey, games like that. For Xbox One, they just said, here's this giant console that we know you don't want here,
To be truthfully honest, in general, all American-based video game companies have sucked horribly in Japan. Not just Microsoft. And Microsoft, having a third go at it. Actually, their fourth go if you consider the MSX.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, at this point, Microsoft has basically figured out, if somebody wants to be on our platform that released a Japanese game, they're going to do it. Like, they'll just make it in the U.S. marketplace because it's such a huge marketplace. If we can get the U.S. marketplace, we're good. The thing is like they've lost in the U.S. at this point. Even if they were able to make a comeback in the U.S., like that's still not going to be a win for them. They have to be winning from jump, or at the very least have a huge market. They don't right now. So there's no rehabbing that. There's no making that resolve itself. Going to the next generation to them has to kind of seem like a soft reset. Well, we can do better next time. We can make it work better next time. And it's like I think in this economy at this point, that is a deeply, deeply stupid idea. And I think it's going to blow up in their face. But whatever.
I mean, it's like
I only
rebuilding
think
the $1 million man, but we just don't want to spend a lot of money.
Right.
And we already know that the PS5 is coming, so it's not like the next gen isn't going to happen, and it's going to happen within the next couple of years. So I really don't see an issue with Microsoft moving forward. The problem that I see is the last two consoles Microsoft has released. We won't count the One S because that's just kind of like it was a small version of the original. The last two consoles that they've released have come in at $500. And I strongly feel if whatever the next Xbox is comes in at 500, Sony's going to come in at 400 and crush them again.
Yeah.
They
develop all of their shit in-house at this point. Like, there's no way Microsoft can reasonably compete with that because they don't have that same degree of R&D. But
they have the capital to say we're going to eat $100 loss on every single one of our consoles to make sure that we're dead even with Sony. We're even cheaper.
They do, but there has to be sort of a point where it's like there's diminishing returns there. And I do definitely feel like this is not a conversation to be had now. Like, this is maybe a separate conversation.
Separate conversation. We should definitely continue.
We're definitely at a point where we are at diminishing returns as it relates to the shit that's actually being made. I.e., there is not a meaningful difference between the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X versus their lower quality, like their lower degree variants, except for frame rates. And listen, may he rest in peace, but I ain't fucking Total Biscuit. I don't give a goddamn shit about frame rates.
Okay, but aside from Microsoft, the thing about Microsoft's press conference, the 5 development studios that they talked about and how they've actually put some of them to work on some of their big titles. Aside from that, I mean, was there anything about their press conference that was exciting to anybody or interesting in the least? I mean, oh look, hey, Battletoads is coming back. Ooh.
Honestly, yeah. Like I think the problem with Microsoft was the fact that they went first. We won't count EA. And normally Microsoft goes first because Sony then comes in last and goes Final Fantasy and all this other stuff, and haha, we win. And I feel this time Microsoft probably had the best general conference. I think Bethesda had the best conference overall.
I
but if you're not a fan of Bethesda's 4 games, you don't care.
I think we got 2 people disagreeing with us, dog.
Well, but what I'm saying though is that if you look at what Sony brought, Sony's like, here are the 4 games we told you we're coming, and basically not a whole lot else.
Oh no, Sony's conference was dog shit.
Yeah,
Sony's conference was dog shit. It was. It's really telling that Sony's conference was so shitty, and it was still like the third worst conference.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. I think Microsoft actually had the best conference, but because they went first, you kind of forgot everything they showed, or it didn't have the impact. If Sony and Microsoft had switched places, then basically E3 conferences closed with Microsoft. We won't talk about Nintendo. But if they closed with what we saw from Microsoft, you'd be like, oh my God, here's Cyberpunk, here's this, here's that. And you'd be like, this is amazing. How did Microsoft win this year?
I
but
think
because they went first, I felt like you were just waiting, like, well, that was good, but we know Sony's going to top it. And then Sony didn't. So you're like, oh, whatever.
I think Microsoft won from a best overall conference perspective, but the big problem with Microsoft's conference is that I don't think it's going to have any way meaningfully move the needle for them as a company, because a lot of those games that were announced there, that were announced like exclusively at the Microsoft conference, are going to be on other platforms.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
But again, Microsoft conference was literally saying, "This gen is done. See us in 2020."
Right.
Yeah, and like that's I don't think that meaningfully helps them as a company. I think they won from a presentation perspective, but from a corporate perspective, I don't think they did themselves any great favors.
I honestly think it helps them for next year, because think about it. If next year's conference or even the 2020 conference, they're like, all right, here's our launch planet for Xbox Next. Fable MMO, follow up to Hellblade, Halo Infinite, and then Battletoads, and maybe toss in a Killer Instinct and Perfect Dark. Like that's a solid launch lineup. And that's not even counting like 2 or 3 other studios that they acquired. That's just some of those studios. So I really think, like what's Sony going to come in with? Well, here's Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is also on Xbox Next. And here's, Last of Us 2, just up-res for the PS5. You know what I mean? Like, obviously they're going to have something, but we already know Microsoft has 5 different studios, essentially all working on exclusive launch titles that could be pretty big.
Now, in regards to Sony's presentation, what the hell were they thinking?
We're winning.
Huh?
Yeah,
we're
that's
winning.
exactly what they
That's
thought.
what they
We're
were
winning.
thinking.
Yeah.
Every time Sony's winning, they do dumb shit.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, we talked about that during the live react, but it's still puzzling to me that Sony would do something so weird. They build
Asinine.
Yeah, like let's take a look at this for a second. They build a kind of like a church tent type fiasco, only to take people out of there, move them to another location. And by the way, between those movings, they have us sitting there staring at 2 or 3 people talking about gameplay footage of, the game we just saw a trailer for. Like for that, like in that case, we saw like extended footage of The Last of Us 2, and then they showed extended footage of Ghost of I forget how to say it.
Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah.
Yeah, Ghost of Tsushima.
Like,
And then,
I think what Sony was trying to portray was, this is a thing that we've decided that we're going to showcase. We want to show people this is how big we feel this game really is. And then in doing so, and then ending up having everything happen the way that it did, and then having to move them. If this was, okay, so if in a perfect world, if Sony had fucking thought this through even for a split second, they should have done more than just the one. They should have had them next to each other so that it was standing room only instead of having chairs. And they should have set it up in such a way that they could have gone through game, so you've got trailer, gameplay, and you see them moving from section to section to section as the gameplay starts. So as you finish The Last of Us 2, you start to hear the flute in the distance in the next section. And everyone starts wandering towards that, and you view that as a camera pan. And then they see that they've got this big grass field with all the wheat flowing, and the guy in the front playing, the flute, and then that kicks into Ghost of Tsushima. Then all of a sudden at the end of that, they finish that trailer out, it blacks out, and you got the next big reveal. And then you've got Death Stranding, and you've got all these big dudes, like these big papier-mâché black dudes with umbilical cords coming out of them. And you've got Kojima laughing in the background because it's Kojima. We don't know what he's doing. He does shit that's weird because we watch it and we play it because it's Kojima. And we go and then we see this, and it pans to the next area, and they've got that, and they've got the dudes floating, and there's the Death Stranding trailer. And then it blacks out at the end of that, and you go to the next one. If they'd have really thought it through and really planned for something like this to actually happen, they would have done it for each of the 4 big games. And as we were going between Camp A to Camp B and Camp B to Camp C, that's when you show the smaller stuff.
and they didn't do that.
Yeah, and they didn't. They said, we're going to stick guys behind a panel and we're going to talk for 20 minutes because people are slow. They have 18 billion tons of equipment they've got to take. Because they treated it like a normal conference, and they shouldn't have.
If you take away the 15, 20 minutes of talking between people, moving between buildings, that conference wouldn't have been more than half an hour. They only
That's
showed.
fine with me.
I mean, yeah, I know, but like when you have Microsoft and Bethesda having over an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes of just showing off games, and you
Right,
know,
and that's what Sony could have done too. They could have put them to a point where by the time they hit the Spider-Man trailer, they were in the stadium, they were in the bigger theater, and they could have gone. At that point, people would have been coming in to like it's like coming in just slightly before during the previews before the main feature actually happens. You roll through and you got all this great stuff. Like they could have done like if they were smart about it, they would have done Last of Us 2 to start, Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, and ended with Death Stranding, and not ended with Spider-Man, and then gone into the well, we don't have any more gameplay of Death Stranding, but we do have Spider-Man, and here's 20 minutes of analysis of a game that people are still interested in, or we're going to play it, after everything was done. But at that point, you have a whole 30 minutes of just talking about the console, talking about other games that could have been at the, because at that point, you've got additional Square Enix trailers that you could show for Kingdom Hearts 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Valkyrie Profile, whatever else the hell they're doing. Yu Suzuki comes back out. We hit our goal. Shenmue 3 release date. Da 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 da. There's a ton of stuff they could have done that they didn't do. Like their idea looked fantastic on paper, and that was it. And that's the part about the Sony conference that pisses me off. They had a phenomenal games lineup. Ghost of Tsushima looked absolutely breathtaking
Until they opened their
entire
mouth and didn't even
sequence.
have an accent. And I'm like, what?
I'm like, what? You're not Japanese. Kill me now. I'm playing with the Japanese language option anyway, so it really doesn't bother me all that much. But the baseline is that they showed off that sequence when they're fighting and the tree and the leaves are flying and that sunset. Oh, that game was gorgeous looking. And then all of a sudden they're like, here's 10 more minutes of talking. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? And then
The
they're
whole
like,
thing
here's
was-
the rest of the games. Like, the games themselves looked great. The way Sony presented it was probably the worst I've ever seen from an E3 since they started streaming it. Like, that's ridiculous. Why would Sony, who knows they're doing really well with their console and with their games library, pull off some sort of quick stunt like this that makes them seem like this is the first time they've ever been at E3? And please don't even get me started about Andrew WK.
Sony's problem was that they were looking at it from a in-person spectator point of view. And from that point of view, while I personally wasn't a fan of it because when I go to a press conference, I want to go in, sit down, and be entertained for 90 minutes. But they were thinking of, okay, we're going to come in and have it be an experience. They had 4 different areas, one for each game. But what happened was after the long intermission, after they realized how long it was going to take people to walk from one to the rest, they just had them go to like the final destination and do everything there. But the original plan was to literally have it go from, here's here and then here and then here. But if they imagine, so we're all upset at the one intermission because it was really bad. Imagine if they had 3 of those.
Ugh.
No one
Like
would've
at
watched.
least Sony
People would've
realized, like,
stopped
hey,
watching.
this is not working. This is not something that we can do.
People would
but
stop watching.
yeah, but the problem is if Sony had stopped to think about the time it takes for the media.
The
The whole thing is
logistics,
most of
yeah.
the media, they don't want to go in and get up and go in and get up and go in and get up. They want to go and sit down. Some people were happy. They were like, oh, yay, this is a nice environment. Oh, hey, this is a nice environment too, whatever, right? But all they would have had to do is say, all right, let's get 30 or so trailers, and then as people, like we're going to do Last of Us, boom, 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 and then immediately after Last of Us, cut to the Avengers Square Enix trailer and show 5 more trailers while these people are moving to the next area. Then once they're in the next area, boom, here's Ghost. And then,
So it's
we're-
like-
as soon as that Ghost switches over, here's 5 more trailers. And then as soon as the trailers are in, boom, cut to freaking, Spider-Man, just whatever. That's all they had to do. That's all
Right,
they had
that's
to
what I
do.
was
Just
saying.
show us something more interesting in between the individual areas. But
Not
instead, they're like,
dudes at a
we'll jump
booth
back to our
talking.
desk that nobody cares about.
Right, and that's what I was getting at. It's just like the fact that they broke off to do an intermission was like, what are we doing? I'm
And it
talking
was almost
over this
immediate.
because
It was
I don't
like,
care.
Here's 5 minutes of Last of Us 2. Okay, now sit and listen to this dude talk for 20 minutes about nothing you care about.
Exactly, and so like the idea on paper was great. Move them to new areas, move them to do this, but trailers. That's what this is about. This is about the trailers. It's about the game. Phil Spencer said it best when he actually says that it's all about the games, and we understand that it's about the games. That's why we have 50 games with 18 launch titles, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, Phil gets it. For the first time in 4 years, Phil Spencer finally fucking gets it. And then you got Sony over here is like, I would have rather watched 10 minutes of Kaz Hirai saying Ridge Racer than watching these guys sitting at this panel stage. I'm like, what are they doing?
And
was
also,
ludicrous.
To be fair, every single panel at E3, whether it was Twitch, YouTube, IGN, I thought all of them were way too casual. Like, I'm sitting here watching Twitch, and some of the questions they're asking, I'm like, I've already seen this question asked a dozen times. Like, ask something I care about. You know, so I would like, this is more of a coverage point of view, but I would like to see at least one hardcore person that knows what they're talking about at each one of these panels. You know, Twitch, like I said, YouTube, whatever. Instead of Jeff Keighley, like, hey, Soul Calibur 6 producer, who's our new character? Like, stop it, Jeff. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't even sound like you care. How are you hosting the Game Awards every year? Like, you know, like, it's that kind of stuff. I'm like, you know, if I have to watch another person ask Shimbori-san about sexuality in DOA, like, I'm going to throw a rock, you know? Like, I've seen this person asked 13 times over the course of E3, but no one is asking, hey, how are you making this game more entertaining for competitive players? What are you doing with this game other than here's Fatal Rush? You know what I mean? Like, no one's asking real questions.
Except you, right? You asked the questions, I hope, for DOA 6 at least?
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, so that was the thing, because I don't have, because right now they're all about the influencers. So Maximilian goes in, great guy, his content's great, but his content's very casual. So Maximilian goes in with 700,000 subs on YouTube, and he gets to play the advanced build, sit down with Master and talk to him, you know, get all this excellent 4K footage. I go in there, Master wasn't there yet, Tom wasn't there yet. They didn't let me talk to Shimbori-san. They made me play the older build that didn't have a Hayabusa or Hayate, and I got 15 minutes with it.
Oh.
And it was like, okay.
For a guy who's been in the DOA community as long as you, and I'm just surprised that you didn't get, you know, any kind of respect.
Well, the issue is that Koei Tecmo's entire PR team from DOA 5 is now gone.
Oh, wow.
And
really?
So every single person, like when I booked my appointment with them, they did not know who I was because they're all new people. You know, I'm not booking
Wait,
my
I
appointment
thought
with
Manny was part of the PR team.
I'm booking my appointment with their PR agency, and their PR agency doesn't know me because they're all new.
I thought Manny was part of their PR.
Manny is the community manager.
Community, okay, yeah.
So he was there, but he was like 2 hours late on day 2. So I didn't see Manny until I came back much later.
Well, then again, that's LA traffic for you.
Well, no, he was like down the street from the convention center. His reasoning that I was told for him being late is that he was waiting for the shuttle and the shuttle never showed up. Now, why it took him 2 hours to call someone and say that, I mean, I don't know.
Man's getting called out on stream.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not upset that he was there. Like, you know, do whatever has to be done, dude. That's fine. It's just the fact that, you know, that they didn't let me interview Shimbori. They were playing on laggy monitors. They only had Xbox One controllers. You know, like when I went to Namco's booth, I had 45 minutes by myself at a Soul Calibur 6 station with my choice of an arcade stick. You know, and I go to Tecmo's booth, you know, Tecmo's meeting room, and here's a laggy monitor with an Xbox One controller plugged into a PC, and no one for me to play against. You know, like, okay.
I guess individual miles may vary. I guess not that it should, but I think my biggest issue is, like, so if I were to look at this entire E3 just objectively, and just to think about it, so if I were to say, okay, if I'm going to look at the conferences themselves and how they were presented, Microsoft is probably the only other one that actually did really well. EA's was more about apologizing and basically saying, sorry, we fucked up. We're
no
listening.
more loot crates.
We're actually listening. We're not trying to fool you. We promise. Look, see, here's our hands. Here's our toes. We're not crossing any fingers or our hands. We promise. No more loot boxes. We're listening to you. Okay, sure. Anthem. Okay, I'm kind of interested. The Borderlands numbers can eat shit, but the rest of the game looks decent. I'm actually interested in Battlefield 5. I'm actually really hyped to see that they announced the Clone Wars content for Star Wars Battlefront 2. Yes, I get that the EA conference didn't have a lot for new stuff because people were looking for new stuff, but it's like, what new stuff? They literally have nothing else to announce right now because everything else is in some sort of state of limbo.
Then
Because-
don't have a conference and give the Anthem trailer to Sony. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I agree with that.
Honestly, the only reason they had the conference was for them to actually come out and go, "Our bad. We're sorry. We're dipshits. We're fixing it. We promise." That was that. If that was all of the entirety of what that was basically them coming out saying, "We fucked up. No loot boxes of Battlefield 5. But Star Wars Battlefront 2 is going to have Clone Wars content. Anthem isn't going to have loot boxes. It's basically just Destiny with kind of like a Borderlands 2 feel to it. We're going to have you watch the trailer at Sony." And that was it. I would have watched that. It would have been 10 minutes, and I would have been happy with that. The Square Enix conference was basically like Nintendo, just videos.
I honestly feel
in a couple
that
of those
Square
games,
Enix
but
would have been better, but I feel Disney is the reason why Square Enix was only half hour, because the original schedule Square Enix was an hour, and they had stated before E3 that we will see the Avengers,
and Valkyrie Profile, and we didn't see
yeah.
it.
And I honestly think what happened was, I think whatever they were going to show of the Avengers, Disney came in and said, "No, you can't show this yet."
Not yet.
Yeah, and then
Exactly.
and then Square is like, well, there went
Fuck.
20 minutes of our presentation. All right.
Yep.
Like because at first I was like, okay, Sony saw what Microsoft did, and then Sony's like, hey, Square, we want to pull Avengers for us. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought we are going to see Avengers and Final Fantasy VII at Sony. I'm like, Sony's like, nope, these are ours. This is what we're going to do now. And
Yep,
Square would have
and
been fine
then
with that. They'd have
neither.
been like, I would not have been surprised if Sony comes out and goes, oh, you did 5 acquisitions? Hey, Square Enix, you're now a second party. You know what I mean? Like, that would not have, I didn't expect it to happen, but that would not have surprised me. Sony's like, hold my beer. We've got Square Enix.
Right? Exactly.
But
I think the
seriously
other part
think
of
that
it,
Disney stepped in, and that's why Square's
I'm
conference
sure.
sucked as much as it did.
I'm sure, and I think so. So, I'm gonna harp a little bit on 2 of the other ones that I was really kind of excited for that ended up being kind of like, ooh. Nintendo had me at robots, and then gave me 25 minutes of Smash.
25 minutes of character reveals in Smash. Not even like entertaining Smash. Literally just, here's a bunch of characters.
Oh, and Ridley.
No,
Okay.
no. Not here's a bunch of characters. Here's all the characters.
Here's every character we've ever known and that you've always seen, and 2 new characters. One of which you already knew, Inkling. And then, oh, by the way, we shrunk down Ridley. Ooh. Okay, fine, whatever. You had me at robots, and you lost me. You had me at robots. I'm still getting a Switch, and I'm buying Robot Shoot. That's beside the point.
And Octopath.
I mean, Octopath is Octopath. I already just get to get it for that.
Yeah.
Plus, I really want to know what the fuck Babylon's Fall is all about, but that's another story. Because Platinum and Square Enix, and I really hope they get married, because, please, can we do that more? That was good. Nier did great, which means...
it was good to sort of like not for Xbox.
Right!
We don't care about Microsoft.
Meh, meh, which is the only reason why they're like, oh, and by the way, we've got Nier. Okay, everyone else already had it. Anyway, so so now we come into, okay, Ubisoft. Why? Okay.
Hey, you got to
that's all I'm
see
gonna say.
30
That's-
seconds of
that is-
gameplay of Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Yeah, I actually liked
is-
Ubisoft's press
look,
conference. Like,
That
I
was
like
the
pretty much
only
everything they
game
showed.
I care about.
Yeah.
Other than that and Siege, I care nothing about any of the other Ubisoft franchises. I'm kind of stoked about Division 2. Don't get me wrong, because I liked the original. I wished it was better. It is now, but
Hopefully it works on launch.
Bethesda makes me want to gut myself. I hate Bethesda with a fiery, burning passion. I hate Bethesda because they do this every single year. You want to know what, and I agree with a large amount of the community when I say this, and I speak for a large amount of people that I know, the PC conference was the best one out of everyone. I don't care what anyone says. Day 9 was the only reason that conference didn't fall flat on its ass, because they had somebody who's in the community who knows what he's talking about, talking with the developers, taking the light off of them and putting it on his bad jokes. I don't care if it was a shitty conference. I still say it was better overall comparatively because we didn't have 7-foot Lars standing next to 5-foot Baldo going, I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. Like, seriously? What were they thinking? They had to know that this is probably the most awkward looking conference out of every single one of them. They had to.
I mean,
They
you had a
to
couple
know.
moments, but overall, I didn't think. I don't like any of Bethesda's game. I have no intention to play a single game Bethesda releases. Right?
I mean,
But-
Doom, but that's because Doom, and I'm an id fan girl. What can I say?
Doom is definitely what I'm going to get, and Vault 76 is definitely going to be something I'm looking forward to at the end of the year. And
Well,
I
but
really
for
would
me,
like.
I don't play any FPS because I get motion sickness really easy, so I
mean,
can't play
sure,
an
I
FPS
understand
even if
that.
I wanted
I
to.
understand that.
So for me, like I don't care about any of Bethesda's games because they're basically all FPS, and I was still entertained by Bethesda's conference, except for the band that came out. I'm like, whatever, don't care about that. But like,
Would have been better
you know,
if it
they're-
were.
I feel like they gave the information that people want to know about their games. Granted, a couple of the games were just here's a title, but those games are way far
Title.
off.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've got at least 2 or 3 years before you see anything.
Yeah, like both of those games are
2020 is
basically
probably
next
when we
gen.
see-
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
we're gonna see more actual gameplay about Space Shoot and Elder Scrolls 6 in 2020. Like that's,
I'm really
that's when I
interested in
see
their
we're
little
gonna see more than
space.
just a
I'm
title.
really interested in their little space game because, to be truthfully honest, I've been wondering when the hell Bethesda was going to step into that realm of that realm for their style of games. But
I mean, fair. Though I have to admit that I did actually. Okay, so going back to Ubisoft, I did actually kind of like the they have this thing now where every console generation or like every 2 E3s we have a new figure game. So we first it was
That game was
Skylanders,
terrible,
then-
by the way. Absolutely terrible.
It wasn't bad. Was it really
It
as
was
bad as
terrible.
everyone thought?
It was like the worst thing I've ever
sad.
played.
Hi, Cade. What are you doing with this?
Hi,
My
Kitty.
cat has decided to join us. Hello, Cade. You are going to be special. Yes. Come here.
Careful, he
But,
might turn
like-
you into Freakazoid.
Trust me, he's already blue screened my computer a couple of times. Anyway, come here, boy.
But I
Come
actually
on.
hadn't had a chance to see the Ubisoft conference. I did manage to see some clips of some of the games, and again, the trailer for Beyond Good and Evil was the main highlight for me. The
What are you doing?
what else was it? What's going on
Skull
here?
and Bones.
Skull and Bones was pretty decent.
Transcendence, whatever the Elijah Wood game is. They talked about Rainbow Six. They talked about all the revamping of For Honor. They opened with Just Dance.
I love Just Dance.
Boy,
they
did
talked about the Mario and Rabbids expansion.
the Donkey Kong expansion. Yep.
Yeah. And
So, I
honestly,
mean,
even though
they had good
Starlink
games,
or
it's
whatever it's called, like when I played it,
Starlink,
it was the problem is to me that's your kids game, right? That's your game that competes with Skylanders essentially. And it did not feel like a game kids are going to be able to just roll through. Like it felt like a game where like first of all,
It was
all the little
geared
pieces are
towards
really
somebody,
small,
not
so you
kids.
don't want to give those to a kid because they're going to eat them. And secondly, like it felt like not challenging, but definitely not easy enough for like a 6-year-old to roll through. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it just
mean,
it wasn't
And
but
then all the
but
Nintendo pandering.
yeah. But they show Starlink with Star Fox, and suddenly everyone's like, "Wait, what is this? We need to pay attention to it." So whether it ends up being good or not, and when it finally releases, the fact that they got Star Fox, people are gonna look at it.
Only for the Switch though. So it's
Yeah.
like that's a Nintendo driver right there, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's just a matter of like I think that in this day and age, having something that is exclusive is probably the best thing you could do for a game, regardless of how good or bad the game itself actually is. At least in its current state at E3. Who knows? It could get better. Who knows? They could make the parts bigger. They were probably just using the smaller ones because they know, like. But again, it's kind of like Lego's Mega Blocks. You know what I'm saying? So eventually, you get to a point where you've got the smaller ones for the adults, or you've got the big ass ones for kids, which looks like Playmobil from the 1980s. It's kind of ridiculous. So it's like there isn't a middle ground, which is fine. but then you have to worry about whether or not you have console exclusivity on specific aspects of it. So now you've got a 3-console game, and only one of those consoles is the one that people actually give a shit about because Star Fox. So it becomes interesting and difficult to really understand the actual game and the merits of that game as to, is this game really going to be worth my time and my money, because of the fact that now I'm going back to the reason why the console wars exist in the first place: game exclusivity to one console. We haven't had something like that in years. So while this game may not be the biggest game, it's definitely going to be a game that people are still going to keep an eye on because of the Star Fox exclusivity.
So, outside of the conferences, was there any games that they you might have seen on a Twitch stream, or you read at like IGN or GameSpot or any other places, anything that they showed off at like at a different medium that might have caught your interest? Brian, what did you see while you were there that you didn't see at a conference that might have caught your eye?
I'm just trying to think.
Most of the good games that I think a lot of us want to play were probably.
Well, I mean, because
don't
they have like an indie showcase now at E3?
Yeah, but I don't care about that.
I mean, there's always a gem in the indie crowd.
I mean, it was a little weird this year because EA
the
and
Pedro
Microsoft
game.
were both
what?
off-site, so you had to leave the convention center to go to EA or Microsoft. Looking at stuff like everything, like, so Namco, I played Jump Force, and that was just as bad as it looked on the trailer.
Yay! I'm happy. I'm probably gonna play it then.
I mean, like the issue I have with that is like that's your follow-up to Dragon Ball FighterZ, and Dragon Ball FighterZ was a deep game that can appeal to both casuals and hardcore players. And then you give me Jump Force, which number one visually looks terrible. Like that's not how I want an anime game to look. I get it. You want to use your Unreal Engine 4 and have sweaty Luffy. That's great. But that's not what I want my anime to look like. And I don't want anime characters running through New York City. Like I want them in their anime environments. And when I played it, it's like, yeah, this is just Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm or J-Stars, whichever one you want. It's literally go in there and mash some buttons. Like there's no competitive level to it, and that's fine. But not for me. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna sell a buttload, I'm sure. But for me, I'm just like, all right, well, this game does nothing for me. And then I went over and played Soul Calibur, and they took out all the just frames and made it super easy. So I'm like, well, I'm going to play this, but that's a game I want to get home and get into training mode. And, Ubi was okay. I didn't have a problem there. Like I said, I think, everything that I like, they already showed at conferences. I think my favorite game of the show probably was Skull and Bones, but that's only because Assassin's Creed 4 is my favorite, and the naval combat was my favorite part of that game. So this is literally just, here's the favorite part of your favorite Assassin's Creed as a game by itself.
Good. I'm actually really glad to hear that, because that was something I was really worried it was going to be clunky, but that makes me happy to hear.
The only problem I had with it was that they had us in a group of, I think, 6 people, and you've got AI ships and you've got the other player ships. And even though we were on a relatively small map, it took me 15 minutes to find another human ship.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm sure once the final game comes out,
maybe it'll be better once you are all easier.
People. Yeah.
Right.
But that was the only thing I said, because everyone else is running into each other and having these fights, and I'm like, I'm fighting the AI still. So find you guys, okay. Yeah. So, but overall, it's literally, I'm just like, I'm shooting all my cannons and you're dying. Go away.
Okay, Mark, you've been very quiet. Please share your thoughts.
I'm sorry, what are we talking about?
E3.
Unbench the Kench. Unbench the Kench.
You just tell us your thoughts on E3, because this whole segment you've kind of been a little quiet outside of the talking about the conferences themselves at the beginning. Is there anything that caught your eye game-wise that was not showcased in one of the conferences that like you might have read up on?
No.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night.
Honestly, I think that the biggest thing about E3 this year was what wasn't there, not what was there,
Yeah, like everybody went into this E3, I believe, with extremely high expectations. People thought they were going to see, Final Fantasy VII remake gameplay footage. People we're definitely expecting a Kingdom Hearts release date, but we got that about a week early.
Which was really weird. That was literally Square saying, "Screw you, Microsoft," because it literally 2 days before the Microsoft press conference, they're like, "No, at our concert, our random concert that no one's even watching, here's our release date for Kingdom Hearts 3."
Mhm.
When they could have such easily done that, literally, like they showed it at the Microsoft press conference. It's just everybody already knew it. So that was literally Square Enix going, "Screw you, Microsoft. You don't get the release date review."
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really any major surprises in the fact that there were certain games that people wanted to see that just weren't there. And for another problem that we had with the Sony press conference was that they showed games that they've been talking about the last couple of years at previous E3s, like Spider-Man. This is like the third time they talked about it. Last of Us 2, they talked about it for the third time again, but this time they at least gave us, a very in-depth gameplay.
Although no
trailer.
release date.
And no release
Yeah,
date.
still
Yes,
no release
exactly.
date.
They did give us, Ghost of Shuru. Sorry,
Wow.
I butchered that. I know, but it just felt like okay, and there was Microsoft on the other hand who's going to come out and show games that they're either going to be timed exclusives or they're going to be multi-platform games that was the majority of their conference. And of course, they had to word everything in a unique way. It's either exclusive or console launch or something like that, just to throw us off. Even though we're not really that stupid, Microsoft. I'm sorry,
Well,
but
the average consumer is though. The average consumer thought Kingdom Hearts 3 was exclusive to PS4 until literally the Microsoft press conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we did get thrown off guard because they showed brand new footage, which again I guess is a big middle finger to Square Enix for bringing up the date.
It was actually really interesting because Microsoft got the modified Frozen trailer. Then we got a secondary modified Frozen trailer at the Square Enix conference, and then we got the Pirates of the Caribbean trailer at Sony.
I thought it was the other way. I thought we got the Frozen one at Sony and we got the Pirates, because I know when we were watching. No, okay, I could be wrong. I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
Sony was the Pirates of the Caribbean trailer, which is a completely different trailer than we hadn't actually seen yet. The thing about it too, though, is that, and this is the thing that I find really interesting, is that when they originally announced Kingdom Hearts 3, it was play it first on PlayStation. Now it's not that anymore. It's a worldwide release launch on all consoles on boot date. So not only did Sony actually lose its initial play it first exclusivity for console launching, so something happened between Square Enix and all of these companies. Something happened. We don't know what. It might be a Nomura thing. We don't know. It might be because they had to reduce numbers, and so now they can't completely perform the way they want to in terms of the actual creation of the game because of the new studio with Tabata. Right. Well, because Nomura's team is basically like, we're going to take our time because I am Nomura and I talk like this. So it's like, robots, okay, seems good. But also, and that's another good thing, is the fact that both Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2 were originally only Sony exclusive. So people could have been bleeding to the point where it's only going to be on Sony because that's where the other ones are, until they released all the ones on PS. But that's beside the point. We don't count those. Honestly, I think out of all of the games that weren't shown, I was super disappointed they didn't say anything about Valkyrie Profile. That is my favorite RPG of all time from Enix. And I was super disappointed. They're like, here's this 3D thing that we're going to tease 4 months before E3, and then silence. And I'm like, really? Really? You're not even going to say anything? So it's I don't know. I was pretty disappointed. Though, like I said, I actually got to see a secondary sort of more in-depth interview about Daemon X Machina, and I'm kind of excited. It's the character artists from Fire Emblem and I think it was Fire Emblem Fates and Fire Emblem Awakening is doing the character sprites, and then the robot sprites are being done by someone who is the person who did both Macross and Gundam mech designs. They are working with Wonderful to actually develop the designs for the weapons and the mechs in Daemon X Machina. So I'm like, and then I got to see gameplay, and I'm like, yes, please, I will buy a Switch for this game. It is totally worth my time and effort to actually go out of my way to buy a new console specifically to play this game. Because for me, it's about the games. It's not about what console it is. And to see something like that on a console that I don't own yet is like, okay, sold.
Now, one thing I do find interesting, granted, this one was already announced already, a complete lack of Sony Vita anything. Of course, they came out and said that the Vita is pretty much dead. And how about this? A complete lack of 3DS anything whatsoever from the Nintendo side in terms of the conference.
We've already known that Nintendo has come out and said that they're not going to be doing anything more for the 3DS or the 2DS or the DS in general.
But they've have hinted that they are still Switch, considering a successor for the 3DS.
I don't think they need that at this point. The Switch is popular enough that people are going to just stick with the Switch at this point. They already came out and said at the end of last year that they're not going to be doing another handheld and that the Switch is the DS replacement. Like, they came out in public and said that. So it's like, okay, we don't need a successor for the DS. We've got it. It's the Switch.
They just need to come out with a brand new battery to replace it. 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it was built on a budget. Like, you can, honestly, if you can hold off on a Switch, wait until whatever redesign they come up with, because it's going to be significantly better than what we have.
So,
I give it another year before we see an updated Switch that's got better battery life, or even an accessory that gives us additional ways to charge the system while it's out
and
of
better
dock.
anti-hacking technology.
Well, I mean, like, you can't even dock it without scratching it.
Oh, yeah.
You literally cannot dock the Switch without scratching it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been lucky. I mean, some people are getting their Switches bent and whatnot, although...
Don't just drop your Switch and you're supposed to
Some
slide
people do
it
that,
with both hands. Look, that's them. That's on them. If they're stupid enough to drop a console into a docking station instead of putting it in the way it was designed to be put into that dock, that is on them. And they are stupid.
Mark,
I haven't taken mine out of the dock, so I don't know if mine is scratched or not, but I am curious if mine is, because the only time I do anything in the dock is it wiggles a little bit when I turn on the power, and that's it. So I am curious to see if mine, because I think mine's literally been out of the dock twice, ever, in the year and some change I've had it. Or I guess it's been, a year and some change.
Mark, I mean, you've been relatively quiet. Is there anything about this past E3 that has caught your eye that you would like to definitely share with us at all?
No.
All right. Well.
So what you're saying is that E3 was as lackluster as we all said it was, and you just don't care about it.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I just, like I said, I feel it's what wasn't there. But even if you look at what wasn't there, like, we know Final Fantasy VII Remake is a while off, but Square Enix still could have been like, here's a quick trailer, and that would have made their conference a million times better if we had seen new footage, But the same thing can be said about Microsoft, like Battletoads. We got a little text thing. Like, you're telling me you didn't have time to just make a CG trailer for Battletoads? Just a real quick CG sequence? Like, it's things like that. Like, you could see the industry as a whole kind of going, we're going to look toward 2019, 2020, Because, like, if even, like, Cyberpunk is next gen. We're not going to see that till at least 2020.
All right. Well, I think this is a good place as any to call it a night in regards to the E3 topic of conversation. I think we've pretty much exhausted a lot, unless there's more for us to complain about. But yeah, I guess as we wrap up the night, does anybody want to plug anything whatsoever? Brian, is there anything you want to plug? Any reviews that you might be coming out with soon for movies?
If you have any questions on DOA 6, I did do a fairly in-depth write-up on Prima. About all I've got. I'm working on getting an interview with Shimbori to get more of the extra details I want, like frame data and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the only thing of significance on there is I've got, to my knowledge, the most detailed report on DOA 6 so far in terms of from a competitive standpoint.
Okay. Mark, anything you'd like to promote or plug?
No, I'm not really doing anything at this point.
Okay, and how about you, Jan?
For right now, no. I'm pretty much just where I'm at for right now.
All right, and yeah, I don't really have anything special. 3 Vets and a New does return this Wednesday on my Twitch channel, so 2 hours of comedy and camaraderie. So definitely tune in 9 p.m. Should be a lot of fun. And with that, I want to thank everybody, Mark, Jan, and Brian, for joining me tonight as we talk about E3. To everybody out there, have a good night. But real quick, let's raid a channel. A friend of mine that I have been watching lately. He should be streaming some Terra on the PS4, so enjoy. And with that, I say everybody, have a good night.